Hello everyone, my name is Mart Johnston. I'm a lecturer in Tokyo and a PhD student at Takushoku University in Japan. Today, I am going to share with you the results of my research entitled ChatGPT and Peer Noticing, Acquiring Knowledge and Improving Writing. For this research, ChatGPT was used by my students only as a post-writing tool in my writing classes. 45 Japanese students participated in this research. Generally, they had passed Aiken Grade 2 or Pre-2, a popular English language proficiency test in Japan. Students completed 4 writing assignments throughout the semester based on topics discussed in their textbook. Here is a comparison table for Aiken grades and CEFR. My students are at A2 to B1 plus CEFR levels. This was the textbook that my classes used in the semester. Now, using a ChatGPT prompt, students were instructed to input their essays into ChatGPT 3 using this prompt. Can you correct the grammar errors in this essay? This prompt was chosen specifically to avoid unwanted changes to wording, phrases, and ideas, which can occur with other prompts like, can you rewrite this essay? The prompt for post-writing activities aim to focus on correcting grammar and awkward phrasing while maintaining the students' original ideas and vocabulary. There is a challenge, however, where the student might not be able to spot all corrections flagged by ChatGPT. But I think that's okay, as long as they learn one or two from the writing activities in ChatGPT. This is a sample of my student taking notes of the errors flagged by ChatGPT. For completing this part of the exercise, students were awarded an additional 2 points. And the writing assignment questions were as follows. Writing question 1, which season most reminds you of your childhood and why do you feel this way? The requirement was 50 to 70 words. Writing to question 70 to 80 words. When you were younger, did you enjoy learning English? Why or why not? Give 3 reasons. Writing 3 question, again 70 to 80 words. What is the best place you have ever traveled to and why? And then writing 4 questions, 70 to 80 words. Describe a memorable online shopping experience you have had. What did you purchase and why did you choose to buy it online rather than in a physical store? Students were given a scaffolding pattern used across all 4 writing activities, which was this blank was blank because, followed by a supporting sentence. Because and then the dependent clause, followed by a supporting sentence. Another reason was that, and then followed by a supporting sentence, and then finally the final reason, and then supporting sentence. This approach aimed to prioritize grammar focus and assess students' knowledge of past verb forms and dependent clauses. Again, the top expectations from the students were to be able to demonstrate their knowledge in past tense and to form complex sentences. As seen earlier, for writing 1, students wrote essays of 50 to 70 words. However, they were able to finish within 12 minutes. For this reason, subsequent writing activities required essays of 70 to 80 words with 20 minutes allotted for each essay. After collecting the papers, I noted the errors and categorized them grammatically. recording them in an Excel sheet. Here are some of my notes about my students' essays. For example, student 1 committed the same error, which was the spelling of nervous, on her first and second writing activities. Here, student 5 shows that he learned that the spelling of excited reflected on his writing 2, while student 6 did not notice the required comma for compound sentences. Here are some of my notes for all of the writing activities, writing 1 up to writing 4. After recording errors and items that my 45 students have learned from all 4 activities, I transferred them into ANCONC program by Lawrence Anthony. The program was able to indicate the top grammar categories that I repeatedly typed in. In this way, I was able to determine the top grammar errors that my students had committed. This is ANCONC. It shows that I typed preposition 34 times, which means that there were 34 preposition errors written by my students, followed by past tense with 32 errors. Now, here are the top errors that I recorded. Number 1 is preposition, and the last would be generalization. For example, when we say generalization, for example, instead of writing I like dogs, they'd write I like dog. The maximum score students could receive was 8 points. The following week, their essays were returned with only their preliminary scores indicated and without any comments on their work. Once again, for completing this, the part of the exercise, when they inputted their essays into ChatGPT, students were awarded an additional 2 points. So after they have inputted their essays into ChatGPT, they recorded their errors, and then they discussed with their peers what they learned from ChatGPT. This method was implemented from the peer noticing activity was implemented from writing 2 to writing 4, following a suggestion by Jim Ronald during a research presentation at the Child Call 2024 conference. Peer discussion was believed to help students remember their errors better. Each student also shared what they had learned from ChatGPT in class, and I took note of these learning items. Time devoted for students inputting their essays on ChatGPT, spotting their own errors, talking to their partner, and sharing one error or one learning item with the whole class was 50 minutes. And what did they say? Now, what kinds of errors were the students able to spot in their own essays that were flagged by ChatGPT? So after inputting into ChatGPT, students took note one error that they committed or item which they have learned from ChatGPT. And then they shared with the class, and I took note of them. So here are some of them. So the problem here, for example, one problem that we discussed about ChatGPT was that For example here, student 2, ChatGPT change I like swimming to I enjoy swimming. So the student thought that I like swimming was wrong. So I explained that sometimes ChatGPT would like to just giving suggestions instead of corrections. And sometimes I would tell them that probably they repeated the same word and then ChatGPT over and over, and then ChatGPT would suggest a synonym to that word. So here are the other comments or learning items or from noted by the students. Now, all errors and comments from each student's essay were also entered into ANCONC 3.58 to identify the main grammar categories that required improvement. Additionally, learning items noted by students were analyzed using the same software. Students noticed that their errors on prepositions, as it reflects that they mentioned preposition 19 times when they shared with the class, followed by verb tense and specifically past tense with 10 errors. Comma rules were noticed by students 8 times. And then collocation or multi-word items 5 times. Now here are the top errors and learning items that the students mentioned. Number 1 is similar to the errors that I took note of. Preposition was top 1, followed by past tense, comma rules, and then spelling, and then pronoun, collocation or multi-word items, adjective, and articles, use of articles. Once again, these were the top grammar categories that I took note of. When we say chunks, also like multi-word items. Now, combining both, the 6 most common grammar categories reflecting the prevalent errors and learning items were used as a basis for the final test. These errors are detailed will be discussed further in the results and discussion part. This individualized 5-item test assessed whether students could recall the errors highlighted by ChatGPT, focusing specifically on the top 6 grammar categories. If a student did not make any of the identified errors, their other mistakes were included in their personalized test. So here, combining both, past form was top, followed by preposition, generalization, the use of because or forming complex sentences, and then comma rules for multiple items and compound sentences, and then collocations or multi-word items. Now, let's proceed to analysis. Here is how I organized their essays. Now, the individualized test was given to all 45 students. It was announced a week before, so it is up to them to review their past essays and ChatGPT's corrections for the upcoming test. It was done on the very last day of the semester. Once again, an individualized test was given to each student where they had to correct where they had to correct 5 mistakes in the sentences. Where they had to correct the mistakes in 5 sentences. These mistakes represented each individual's 5 most common mistakes. Here is a sample of an individualized test. Each item had 2 points. Below, I wrote the items that were corrected, for example, collocation, complex with because and preposition. And on the next column, those were the errors that were not corrected. Some, for example, another preposition error was not corrected, pluralization, and another multi-word item or collocation. Some items had 2 errors, but in general, I only expected them to correct 1 error per sentence. Now here are the grammar items learned and the learning items missed by the students. These are the results of their individualized tests. Then I rearranged them alphabetically so I could count all of them. Now, here are the items learned or the errors that were corrected by my students in their individualized tests. So 97 items, 41% of the total errors, number of errors that were corrected. The top learning item here is past tense with 18 errors that were properly corrected, followed by pluralization. The results indicate that students demonstrated a solid understanding of using the past tense in appropriate contexts. They also learned to pluralize items correctly and to use suitable prepositions with specific nouns. To clarify, collocation refers to students recalling the correct phrases to replace awkward wording they initially wrote, while collocation preposition means that students were able to provide appropriate prepositions that accompany the given verbs. For example, receive from. There were 7 corrections made that reflected their knowledge of writing complex sentences that begin with because, whereas only 3 corrections were made regarding the use of commas in compound nouns. When we say comma multiple, it means comma rules for multiple items. Here are the missed learning items or those errors that were not corrected by my students. Total of 138 items or 59%. The most common writing error overlooked by many students was collocations or multi-word items, highlighting the need for them to learn multi-word expressions rather than just single vocabulary items. The collocation preposition error indicates, with 10 errors, indicates that students struggled to provide the appropriate prepositions for nouns or verbs. In this, for example, interest in. In this regard, it may also be beneficial for students to study phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs such as get out, things like that. Additionally, several errors related to complex and compound sentences went unnoticed, suggesting that AI alone is insufficient for helping them grasp how to construct these sentence types. Students also found the use of prepositions in prepositional phrases challenging. Notably, 6 students did not recognize the past tense of the modal verb can. Furthermore, some students wrote sentence fragments beginning with especially and for example, which highlights the need for practice in distinguishing between complete and incomplete sentences. But these are some limitations for my first analysis method. They are not English majors. The motivation is not there to take advantage of this activity. They could have corrected the easiest ones. The more difficult ones were not yet learned. They might need more exposure, especially exposure to multi-word items. But yet, 41% is still something. 41% like learned items. Now, second part of the analysis was about what is quantitative. To determine whether students had gained knowledge or missed learning items flagged by ChatGPT, correctly written sentences were counted. For example, for writing one, this student correctly wrote one sentence out of 5 sentences, and then writing two, 1 out of 6 sentences. So here shows the comparison of correct items across, correct sentences across all essays. While all 45 students participated in the final individualized test, only 33 students who completed all 4 essays and participated in the post-writing activity using ChatGPT as a proofreader were included in the second analysis method. The scores were analyzed using ANOVA to determine the F-value or P-value and assess whether the differences among student scores were statistically significant. Regarding the counting of correctly written sentences by 33 students, the results returned an F-value of 1.606, indicating a slight difference in their writing abilities, but not a substantial one. The P-value was 0.193, which suggests that the differences in their writing scores are not statistically significant. The lack of significant evidence for writing improvement may be attributed to the students' insufficient knowledge of multi-word items and other learning items from ChatGPT that they missed, mentioned in previous discussions. Now, moving forward, significant errors continue to occur in the areas of multi-word items, comma usage in compound sentences, and the construction of complex sentences. Moving forward, there's a need for intensive instruction on comma rules, various sentence types, including complex and compound sentences, and a greater emphasis on teaching multi-word expressions rather than focusing solely on single-word vocabulary. Using ChatGPT as a post-writing tool, along with peer feedback during writing activities, can be effective in promoting independent learning and teaching students to leverage AI for their educational growth. However, this approach needs additional support from language teachers to maximize its effectiveness. Now, here are some related studies and my main references from my research. Once again, my name is Mart in Johnston. Thank you very much.